Sharing screen. Yes. So today we have to talk about post-colonialism. Post-colonialism is a very important theory. All of us are interested in it and involved in it. Post-colonialism is about our identities and culture. And we have studied a lot of post-colonial writers. It is something that is very familiar. As you know, post-colonialism, before I teach you, some of you were saying you are stressed, things like that. And I saw a dream. In the dream, I don't know who it is, some student. It was a woman. She is scolding me and saying, you keep saying, as you know, as you know, as you all know. I don't know anything. You have to teach me. That I heard in my dream. Somebody told me. You are not even letting me sleep. Come on, this is not fair. I couldn't sleep. And in my dream, I think I don't remember clearly, but I think I removed, as you know, from PowerPoint or something. Somewhere I was removing it. In all my videos, I say, as all of you know. I say that because I don't want you to think I don't know. I want you to think, yeah, I know. Anyway, jokes apart, coming back to post-colonialism. Post-colonialism talks about colonialism first and foremost. Post-colonialism means what comes after colonialism. Colonialism is the extension. What is colonialism? The extension of a nation's sovereignty beyond its borders. A nation is extending its sovereignty beyond its borders. Imagine that our house is one nation. Our neighbor's house is another nation. Okay? So no, dekho. Our house is one nation. Our neighbor's house is another nation. Each of our nations, our house and neighbor's house, both have sovereignty. That means freedom to rule themselves. In our house, we can decide what is the breakfast, whether we should clean the house today or not. Everything we can decide. Suppose our neighbor extends their sovereignty over our nation. Beyond its borders, they are coming and ruling us. Then that will become colonialism. They are trying to colonize us. They will send somebody to live in our house to check whether we are doing everything according to their dictates. Can you imagine? That is colonialism. Colonialism is extending a nation's sovereignty beyond its borders. By the establishment of settler colonies are established in order to rule people. Indigenous populations are directly ruled or displaced. Indigenous populations are directly ruled or displaced. Sometimes the colonizer will come and rule us directly. We will be here, like in India. We are here in India, they are ruling over us. But what happened in America? The Native Americans were all wiped out, displaced. They did not even remain. They died or they left. So imperialism is related. Imperialism is a set of beliefs used to legitimize or promote such a system. Our nation, we are a democracy. Our neighbor cannot come and rule us. We don't believe in it. Immediately we will throw him out. But suppose we had an imperialist ideology where it became legitimate that some people ruled over others. In feudal ideology, it became legitimate that landlords controlled peasants. In imperialism, it became legitimate or accepted that some people ruled over others. So a set of beliefs used to legitimize the system. Imperialism is an ideology. Colonialism is a practice. Imperialism is the ideology of colonialism. Clear? Then what is cultural hegemony? Cultural hegemony is based on the ethnocentric belief that the morals and values of the colonizer are superior to those of the colonized. The morals of the colonizer means England. The morals of England are superior to the morals of the Indians. That is cultural hegemony. Antonio Gramsci talked about cultural hegemony. The belief that the ethnocentric belief, ethnocentric means centrality given to our ethnicity. Our ethnicity means our culture. Cultural hegemony is the ethnocentric belief that the morals and values of the colonizer are superior to the colonized. In the West, this placed white people at the top of the animal kingdom. Above human beings, above animals, above everything, white people. This became a scientific belief. White people were placed on top of the animal kingdom naturally, in charge of dominating over non-European aboriginal population. Oh, you are aboriginal. Wait, I will come and dominate you. Like, you are Dalit. I am upper caste. I will dominate over you. It is your right. Oh, sorry, it is your duty to serve me because I am upper class. Like that. The white people said it is your duty to serve us because we are white, you are black. Suppose tall people start saying all short people should serve them. Will you accept? It is like that. All tall people are saying short people should serve us. Tall people are saying you should be our servants. How absurd. So imperialism is as old as the state. Wherever human beings lived in a political organization, imperialism was there somehow. Colonialism can be traced back to ancient Phoenicians of 30,000 years ago. European colonialism had two broad waves from 1492 to 1852. Oh, yo, so many centuries. And from 1850, that means Victorian period, to the end of the Second World War is the second period, it is more imperialistic. Why is there a division here? Because Industrial Revolution, Victorian period, etc., started a new trend, Darwinism, etc. Because of Industrial Revolution, the British became very dominant. Because of Darwinism, white people above black people, like that. Because black people are more like monkeys, it seems. All these ideas came in the second half of imperialism. During and after the Second World War, there was the disintegration of colonial powers. During this time, colonial powers disintegrated. Why did Amina, don't sleep? See? Sit up, Amina. I can't believe this. I am sitting here teaching hours and hours. You can't even sit up in a chair. God is showing me, remember, when people are sleeping, God is quietly switching on your video. God is my video operator, remember. Okay, listen everybody. What are the purposes of colonialism? Let me emotionally blackmail you, even though I don't have time. Show me one person in India who teaches you this much for this money that you've paid. Show me one person, I'll return your fees. Who will give so much material, explain so much, give quizzes and everything, make all these books? Can you even buy a couple of clothes for this amount? I am giving you material for a lifetime, knowing that you will share it. Some of you will misuse it. Some of you will sell it. Even then, I'm thinking of those people who will benefit from it. I am thinking of those people who will pass, and because of that, their problems will be solved. Please respect my efforts because I'm doing this for you. Listen to me. Make time to listen to the videos. Sit up and keep a paper. I know you are tired. I know you did a lot of work in the morning. You had job, you had this, children. People, human beings are are eager, longing to take rest, to relax. Only 3-4 months you have to work. Just look at me. Just look at me. If I can do it, can't you do it for yourself? This morning I did recording from 9 o'clock. From 9 o'clock till 2 o'clock I was recording. Then again from 3 o'clock continuously I'm teaching till 11 o'clock. Only because people's careers, they have all passed NET, they have all passed MA because of the failure of the system. Because of so many reasons that are not my fault. People have passed and they can't pass NET. NET is asking them too high questions. They don't know what to do. So I have made all this material over these years. I am also a human being. I am terrified. Last night I sneezed 2 times. I was terrified because what if I get fever? What if my voice goes? So many people's lives are in my hands. You understand? I can't fall ill. I can't. God is with me. That is why. It is not my doing, of course. So we are doing a very serious activity here. We are doing something that has taken me years. And my life is reduced because of it. I will die very soon because of the strain I am taking. I know it. Because I am living the life of many people. So when I am doing this, please help me. You should do your work. You should attend class properly. You should take efforts to read and study and watch the video again and research. Because I know that not only you, very few people will be able to do this kind of work. Very few people in the world. I know the value of my work. And I know the value of all the people who have helped me, including students, by making material for me, by paying fees and coming to me, including you. I know your value. I will not cheat you. You should not cheat yourself. Did you understand? You have a lot of responsibility. You are not machines into which I can pour petrol. Your head has to work. You have to study. Only then you will be able to pass. Otherwise, I should not spend time teaching. I should go bribe NTA and find other questions. That is what I should do. If I can't do that, the only thing possible is to give you the material so that you work. If I work, you won't pass. Even if I teach you everything in the world, still you won't pass unless you work. Are you following me? I am at the limit and the extreme of my endurance and capacity. I can't do anything more. If I do more, I might die. I'm like that. So please help me. Do your work. Take this as a very, very serious activity. Okay? Every day, not only today, every day. Okay, I know you are there with me. I trust you. I am empowered by you. I am able to do this because of you. Thank you. Your passing is the greatest blessing I can have. But your passing is in your hands, not mine. I can only take you till the water. You have to drink it. Okay? So, what are the purposes of colonialism? Why did colonialism happen? Why did they suddenly come and rule us? They wanted land. They wanted settlement because in America especially, many of the settlers were refugees. They were thrown out of Jacobean England. Remember Pilgrim Fathers. They wanted settlement. Then they had a religious purpose. They wanted to spread their religion. They themselves wanted to escape from persecution, but they also wanted to spread their religion because they thought their religion is the only right religion. It was because they were victims of religious ideology. They were not tolerant. They could not accept other people. They began converting other people. And they also had an exploitative and economic purpose to make money, to amass natural and human resources. Around $45 trillion they made from 173 years in India, looting us. But you know, if there is money somewhere, everybody is desperate. To solve our own problems, we need that money. So it started like that, but slowly, it became very exploitative. Sadly, there was a moral purpose. The moral purpose is that they believed that the white man has a moral responsibility to teach the black people. The white man has a moral responsibility to teach the black people. They thought that the black people are sinners. They thought that the black people are going to hell. They felt the moral responsibility to save them, a moral sense of responsibility, since they are morally, culturally, ethically, intellectually superior to all people, to everybody. They thought above everybody, we are superior. We should educate them. We should enlighten them. We should civilize them. In Huckleberry Finn, the people of the town are thinking that, St. Petersburg, they are thinking that they have a moral responsibility to civilize Huck. Did you understand? Kipling also showed this moral purpose in the poem White Man's Burden. In the poem White Man's Burden, he's asking the white people to send their children to the East to serve the Eastern people. People in India, Africa, etc. are no good. They will all go to hell. They don't know anything. They don't have any capacity. Send your children, white people. Let them go and serve the Indians and Africans. That is what Kipling said in White Man's Burden poem. Take up the white man's burden. Send forth the best ye breed to serve the half sullen people, half devil, half child. Something like that is the stanza. At this time, there was social Darwinism. Social Darwinism made them understand scientifically that it is okay to oppress the weak people because the fittest will always survive. We have to fight. We are the fittest. It is okay to oppress the weaklings. That is social Darwinism. Social Darwinism also taught them it is okay to do colonization because colonization will lead us to a better society where the right people are ruling. The black people do not know how to rule. They don't know how to live. We will teach them. This is the purpose of colonialism. Did you understand, everybody? Now, a brief look at Western colonial history. Western colonization began in about 1500. In 1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Bahamas. In 1498, Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India around Africa. Around Africa, Vasco da Gama traveled and reached India in Calicut in Kerala, 1498. This made the relation between the East and the West easier. Sea power shifted from the Mediterranean region to the Atlantic. Before that, the Mediterranean Sea was the center of power. People traveled from Europe across Mediterranean Sea and reached Asia. But now they were traveling through the Atlantic. The major colonial powers are UK, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands. Colonialism was aided by trade and commerce. trade and commerce, technological inventions, cartography, map making. This morning I recorded a video on Heart of Darkness, and I forgot one thing. Whatever I am teaching you in the main class, that every day at 6, will somebody post in the group? Do you want me to do that? That every day at 6 video you should post in the group. Who will take the responsibility to do that every day? Tell me in the chat box. Medhavi. Yes, Medhavi will. Medhavi, every day what I'm teaching, that every day at 6 you should post. Now, colonial history began in about 1500. Christopher Columbus landed in the Bahamas. Vasco da Gama came to India. Sea power shifted to the Atlantic. Major colonial powers emerged. Colonialism was aided by trade and commerce, technological inventions, cartography. In Heart of Darkness, Marlowe, as well as other white people, are all attracted by maps. Maps are my passion, says Marlowe there. Then British colonialism started. Britain began to establish overseas colonies in the 16th century. Britain began to establish overseas colonies in the 16th century itself. British Empire slowly came into being in the late 18th century. The empire where the sun will never set. And Britain started colonies in America and the West Indies. The first phase of British colonialism concentrated in the New World or America. New World means America. After that, they concentrated in West Africa and India. These are the places where they conquered first. And after the American Revolution, this phase of colonialism kind of ended. And then again it began. By 1914, British Empire covered 1/5 of the world's land surface. If you divide the whole land of the world into 5 parts, 1 out of that is ruled by Britain. And Britain ruled 1/4 of its population, 1/4 of its population. British colonialism is driven by the need for economic expansion. Political, linguistic, cultural legacy spread at this time. Economically, they advanced, politically, linguistically, culturally, and Britain became the empire where the sun never sets. That means somewhere in the world, Britain, in British colony, sun will be rising. Sun will be there. Post-colonial studies as a discipline began in the 70s and 80s. It was based on post-colonial literature, post-colonial fiction that was published immediately after the Second World War. Post-colonial fiction was published at that time. At that time, the post-colonial was also referred to as Commonwealth. But today, we don't call it Commonwealth. Commonwealth is not a good word now. Commonwealth literature is a bad word. Also, we called it Third World Studies. Third World Studies, another name. French demographer Alfred Sauvy coined the term Third World. Tiers monde, that is the word. During the Cold War period, the US and the USSR came to be called the First and Second Worlds. US and USSR, First World, Second World, rest of the world is Third Worlds. Frederick Jameson wrote the controversial essay, Third World Literature in the Era of Multinational Capitalism. There is also reference to the Fourth World. The Fourth World refers to the subaltern and the aboriginal communities within the Third World. The Fourth World refers to the subaltern, the underprivileged people, the Dalits and the natives, the aborigines within the Third World. What are the aims of post-colonialism? To analyze the process of decolonization. Post-colonialism aims to analyze decolonization, to study cultures that were formerly and currently colonized, to study those cultures that were formerly colonized, that are currently colonized. Post-colonialism challenges the universalist assumptions of liberal humanism. Post-colonialism is challenging the universalist assumptions. Everybody in the world are the same. That assumption is challenged. Post-colonialism wants to reclaim the past. Post-colonialism wants to rewrite the past. The past has been written and written in the favor of the white people. Post-colonialism wants to change it. Post-colonialism engages in new disciplines like South Asian studies, subaltern studies, resistance studies, historiographic revisionism, then colonialism and identity. Whole countries, along with social groups and divisions within them. Whole countries, along with social groups and divisions within them, were colonial inventions. Many modern political boundaries in West Africa were based on linguistic, political, and economic contrasts. Modern political boundaries in West Africa were based on linguistic, political, economic contrasts. And all these resulted in so many small countries that are very unscientifically created. The European colonial policies created artificial divisions that created modern political boundaries. If you look at the map of Africa, you will see that it is like cut up with a pair of scissors, some parts. Natural enemies got thrown together. Natural friends got divided. With the boundaries, rivers got divided. Europe cut up Africa in unnatural ways. This had a destabilizing effect on a number of ethnic groups. Ethnic groups were all displaced, deterritorialized. And all this is still felt in African politics. African countries undergo civil war because of this. It was because of the British game of divide and rule. Like it led to partition in India also. So colonialism has negatively affected our personal and national identities. The origins of post-colonial theory lie in the anti-colonial movements in Africa and Asia. Africa and Asia started some anti-colonial movements. Post-colonial theory emerged in reaction to this in the 1990s. Are you all paying attention? What did I say in the previous slide? I said that Africa is unnaturally cut up, leading to civil war in Africa. In India also, India-Pakistan fighting is because of colonialism. And then I'm saying post-colonial theory emerged as an academic discipline. We began to study it in the 1990s. Clear, everyone? Post-colonial theory is very diverse, a rich variety of thoughts and ideas. Robert Young called it tricontinentalism. Who coined the term third world, remember? Alfred Sauvy. Who coined the term tricontinentalism? Robert Young. It is a very famous book that he wrote. And post-colonial theory started what is called colonial discourse analysis. What is colonial discourse analysis? The post-colonial critics started reading colonial texts in order to unmask colonial ideology. When you read Tempest or Heart of Darkness and find the colonial ideology in it, that is colonial discourse analysis, an early method of post-colonialism. They attempted to unmask colonial ideology in literature and culture. These discourses legitimized certain knowledges, ideas, and opinions while silencing others. These discourses legitimized certain knowledges, ideas, and opinions and involved actual material practices of colonial oppression. When colonial discourses worked in literature, Prospero's imperialist discourse is working there. Shakespeare's or Tudor dynasty's imperialist discourse is working in Tempest. It silenced people like Caliban, Miranda, Ariel. Their voices we don't hear, only Prospero's voice we hear. That is one thing. They legitimized certain knowledges, certain ideas, certain opinions became acceptable, while others were silenced. This also involved actual material practices of colonial oppression, chaining Black people, using them as slaves, for example, actual material practice. Colonial discourse analysis unmasks all this, exposes all this. This is 1970s and 80s. 1970s and 80s. In 1980s and 90s, what happened? The focus was on how colonial writers underscored racial difference. How colonial writers are underscoring means emphasizing. How colonial writers emphasized racial difference and negotiated imperial power. Texts are read almost exclusively for politics as socio-political documents. Texts are read almost exclusively for politics. Texts are read as socio-political documents for their socio-political features, not for their aesthetics. Post-colonial theory began to be inclusive of the issues of immigrants, refugees, Blacks, and ethnic minorities. Post-colonial theory began to be inclusive. They began to include the issues of immigrants, of refugees, of Blacks, and ethnic minorities. And post-colonial theory became more diverse, more general. What are the three characteristics of post-colonial writing? Post-colonial writing shows three major characteristics. Listen, everybody. The silencing and marginalization of the post-colonial voice by the imperial center. First and foremost, I am a post-colonial writer. Okay, this is Chinua Achebe's book. I am also a post-colonial writer. What do? I talk about the silencing and marginalization of the post-colonial voice. How my voice has been silenced. How my voice has been marginalized by the imperial center. That is the meaning of. That is one issue in post-colonial writing. Post-colonial writing is about the silencing and marginalization of the post-colonial voice. Secondly, first point was how the post-colonial voice is silenced or marginalized. Secondly, post-colonial writing is about the abrogation of the imperial center within the text. In a post-colonial text like Chinua Achebe's text, how the imperial center is rejected. Chinua Achebe refuses to accept white people as the central people. Chinua Achebe refuses to show white people as powerful and central. He rejects. Abrogation means rejection. The rejection of the imperial center within the text. That is another thing that post-colonial writers show. So first they will show how post-colonial voices were marginalized and silenced. Post-colonial people or colonized people were not allowed to speak. Friday cannot say whatever he wants. Caliban cannot say whatever he wants. Then post-colonial literature rejects the imperial center within the text. They refuse to show white people as the center. Third is the active appropriation of the language and culture of that center. They use English in their own ways. The post-colonial writers use English, the language of the center, the culture of the center, the colonizer, is appropriated or used in their own way. When you read Chinua Achebe, you have to look up a dictionary of African terms, otherwise you won't understand. So many words, even a white man will not understand this English text. Even a white man will not easily understand this English text because This text is full of African words. When Arundhati Roy writes, she uses a lot of Indian expressions. So these people are using English language in their own way. Bill Ashcroft, Gareth Griffiths, and Helen Tiffin have said this in The Empire Writes Back 1989 book. There are three modes of reading. Post-colonial theory includes three kinds of reading. Rereading English literature to examine how English literature reinforced imperialism. Post-colonial critics again read English literature to see how English literature enforces imperialism. Tempest supports imperialism. Jane Eyre supports imperialism. Gayatri Spivak said, Jane Eyre supports imperialism. There is worlding in Jane Eyre. So, post-colonial theory shows how English literature can be reread to enforce imperialism, analyzing how these texts constructed colonial subjects, analyzing how these texts constructed colonial subjects, how characters became colonial subjects because of the texts, such as our Caliban, and how these subjects resisted the construction. Caliban talks back to Prospero. That is a resistance on the part of Caliban. So post-colonial critics reread literature to see, to show how it reinforces imperialism, how colonial subjects are created, but they also resist. They also discuss the ways in which colonial subjects write back to the center. The colonial subjects write back to the center. They question the center. Frantz Fanon lived from 1925 to 61. Born in Martinique. Chronology may be important here also. He was trained in psychiatry in France, worked in Algeria. Fanon was inspired by Aimé Césaire and the Algerian independence movement. Fanon was inspired by Aimé Césaire. Remember, Negritude movement. The first book that he wrote in French was translated as Black Skin, White Masks. It explored the psychological effects of racism and colonialism, and how racism impacts upon the psychology of the people, of the colonized people. The second influential work he wrote is The Wretched of the Earth, 1961. It is important that you read at least a few pages of all these books. They are very important. Black Skin, White Masks is a historical critique of the effects of racism on the colonized psyche. Black Skin, White Mask is about how blackness is constructed. How blackness is constructed. Blackness is not just a color of the skin. It is constructed by the Orientalism of the Westerners. He talks about dependence and inferiority as internalized. You know, when Black people depend on white people, it is a construct. They are being taught to depend and feel inferior. And he also speaks of the violence of colonization as well as the anti-colonial struggle. Decolonization is always a violent phenomenon, he says in Wretched of the Earth. So the chapters, it is very, very important to know the chapters, because sometimes they will say the pitfalls of national consciousness is an essay by Frantz Fanon in which book, some things like that. You should know the title, the chapters. So concerning violence, spontaneity, its strength and weakness, the pitfalls of national consciousness. Very famous, these are on national culture, colonial war, and mental disorders. It would be good if you do a little bit of research on what all this is about, read the book a little bit. I will tell you a few details. Pitfalls of national consciousness. Explore the connections between race and class. The African bourgeoisie The bourgeoisie means the creamy layer. The African middle class or the educated people who are coming above the lower class, they resist colonialism. But their resistance is not as powerful as the European bourgeoisie's resistance to feudalism. In Marxism, we talked about how the European bourgeoisie resisted feudalism. The European bourgeoisie's resistance to feudalism was very powerful and effective. The African bourgeoisie is being criticized by Fanon because their resistance is not as powerful. The former Africans are rooted in self-interest and narrow nationalism. Nationalism is narrow. It is a negative thing. The Africans are defeated by their own self-interest and narrow nationalism. Fanon shows the limitations of nationalism and national unity. And he shows how the national bourgeoisie uses nationalism to get some privileges. And the bourgeoisie of Africa, the middle class of Africa who fought against the colonizers, they are acting like the colonizers. And the colonizers are now turned into the bourgeoisies. The whites further divide post-colonial Africa into white and black. So post-colonial Africa, like India was divided forever. Like that, post-colonial Africa is divided forever. He also talks about the difference between a country and a nation. A country is a space of geography. Nation is a psychological concept. The idea of nation was propagated by colonialism. It is colonialism that propagated the idea of nation. Nation studies is an emerging field. And here he also shows that subjugating colonial identity leads to madness. The identity of the colonized people is not fully formed. The colonial identity that is attributed to us is subjugating us. We become like subjects. We become victims or slaves. All this will lead to madness. It is shown in many literary works. This, suppression or lack of self-identity turning into madness. The last conclusive line is very famous. The bourgeois phase in the history of underdeveloped countries is completely a useless phase, he says, in Pitfalls of National Consciousness. The chapter on national culture was originally a talk. He explores the relationship between the concepts of freedom, the struggle for freedom, and culture. In our national culture, he's exploring what is the relationship between culture and struggle for freedom. Colonialism entirely disrupts the culture of the colonized people. Colonialism, for example, Friday's culture is entirely disrupted by Robinson Crusoe. Robinson Crusoe completely dominates over Friday. The colonized people are made to realize the unreality of their culture. Colonized people's culture is negated. They become cultureless. Colonized culture changes when it starts to resist. When India was ruled by the British people like Macaulay said, India has nothing to teach itself. India is cultureless, languageless, nothing is there. Everything will be given to India by English. But when India began to resist, India began to possess a new culture and a literature of combat. Combat means resistance, conflict, fighting. A literature of combat will create a national consciousness. A national consciousness will be created by resistance literature. That is the meaning. The conclusion, post-colonial nations should not imitate Europe. They should devise new schemes based on the unity of mankind. Western aesthetic thought isolated literature from socio-political commitments. So post-colonial nations, without imitating Europe, they should devise their own schemes. Western aesthetic thoughts, the aesthetic thought or artistic thoughts of beauty, etc., about by the Westerners, isolated literature from socio-political commitments. Literature need not have socio-political commitment. Literature, all that literature needs is aesthetics. That is what art for art's sake movement, modernism, etc. was saying in the beginning of the 20th century. All that literature needs is what? Aesthetics. No need of socio-political commitment. This is what Westerners were saying. Fanon is objecting. Fanon asserts that political struggle is integrally connected to society and politics. Sorry, to literature and culture. Literature's connection with socio-political events is integral. Fanon asserts that political struggle is integrally connected to literature and culture. So that is about Frantz Fanon. He, in a nutshell, he highlighted the psychological effects of colonization. He highlighted the violence involved in colonization and decolonization. He showed how Westerners dominate over the Easterners, effacing their identity, leading them to madness, wiping out their cultures, etc. Then we have to talk about Edward Said, 1935 to 2003. He was a Palestinian professor of literature at Columbia University, a public intellectual involved in public debates on Palestine issue. And Said was an accomplished pianist. There are three main aspects of Said's work. As a literary critic, he was influenced by Foucault. He was influenced by Foucault and Foucault's theory on how power works on us. He examined Western constructions of the Orient, particularly Islam, how the Westerners talk about the Orientals or Easterners, or particularly the Muslims, how the Westerners force some identities upon the Easterners. Remember, Edward Said was a Palestinian. He had political commitments. He addressed Palestine's struggle against Israel for a homeland. He was politically involved. Look at his major works. Beginnings, 1975, is his first influential work. Beginnings is about the philosophical concept of beginning. Beginning of a career, beginning of a text, how it marks a change or subversion, and how it is related to the problematic of language. Beginnings, one book by Edward Said. He also wrote another book later called On Late Style. Like beginning, he also talked about the end of people's careers. On Late Style. Then Orientalism is a 1978 book. It is a Western corporate institution, he says. Orientalism is a Western corporate institution. How the Westerner looks at the Oriental is like a corporate institution for coming to terms with the Orient through stereotypes. The Orientals are reduced to stereotypes, and Orientalism serves to authorize views of the Orient and to rule over it. The views of the Orient, the Westerner will have certain views of the Orientals, and through these views, the Westerner will also rule over it. Orientalism is the perspective of the Westerner on the Oriental. Did you understand how the Westerner looks at the Oriental? That is called Orientalism. Then Orientalism serves to self-define the West. The other day, I was talking about this in another context. The Westerner needs to define the Oriental as negative other, so that the Westerner will look like he is better, that he is progressive, that he is an amazing person, because he wants to show that he defines himself as great by showing that the other or the non-Westerner is bad. The white man defines the black man as bad so that the white man will appear good. You know, when two children fight, both of them were playing and accidentally they hit against the table. They were fighting, okay? Both of them were fighting. They hit against the table, one pushed the other. And the other fell against the table and something fell from the table and broke. Then these children will come to the mother and say, he did it, he did it. What is the meaning of he did it? It means I did not do it. You define, you say I did not do it by saying somebody else did it. That is Orientalism. The African did it. The African is bad. I am not bad. That is Orientalism. The Westerner is self-defining and justifying the imperial domination over the Orient. The African is bad. That is why I am ruling over him. Other works are The Question of Palestine, Covering Islam, The World, The Text and the Critic. Here in World, The Text and the Critic, Edward Said says that critical theory has retreated into a labyrinth of textuality. Critical theory has retreated into a labyrinth of textuality. That means so much construction, textuality, jargons. Critical theory has lost touch with the resistance and heterogeneity of civil society. Literary theory is not realistic. It is not social. It is completely labyrinthine, textual. So he's arguing that the text is separated from the world. Listen, everyone. In The World, The Text and the Critic, Edward Said argues that the text is no longer rooted in the world. The text is separated from the world. Texts are in the world and hence worldly. And that's a very famous statement. Culture and Imperialism of 1993 is a continuation of the themes in Orientalism. Culture and Imperialism continues. It's like a sequel to Orientalism. It's a focused examination of the relations between the Occident and the Orient. It is in Culture and Imperialism that he talks about Mansfield Park. He criticizes Mansfield Park. Critiques. Edward Said attempts to trace the connection between imperialism and culture. In Culture and Imperialism, he is trying to trace the connection between imperialism and culture in the 18th, the 19th, the 20th centuries. Culture and imperialism impact on each other, he says. Culture and imperialism impact on each other. Culture, if affects imperialism, if imperialism affects culture. The power to narrate or block other narratives from forming and emerging is very important to culture and imperialism. We have to block narratives from emerging. We have to narrate our own narratives. Suppose I am fighting with somebody and the case is in the court. I want to say my side. I want to prevent him from saying his side. Isn't it like that? The power to narrate is important. The power to block other narratives is important. When English people are teaching us English, when the British people are teaching us English, they are blocking our narratives and teaching us their narratives. Clear? Culture and Imperialism draws on the ideas of Raymond Williams from Country and the City. Raymond Williams wrote The Country and the City. In one of the essays, Edward Said attempts a post-colonial reading of Jane Austen's Mansfield Park. In Culture and Imperialism, he attempts a post-colonial reading of Jane Austen's Mansfield Park and says that when Fanny Price asks Uncle Bertram about slavery, her question is met with dead silence. That dead silence is analyzed by Said. Edward Said juxtaposes the colony and the manor house. In feudalism, we had the manor house. The landlord owned the manor. The colony is like a manor. In the colony, there is a feudal relation. Power relations are the same in both spaces. He says that in Culture and Imperialism. Now we will talk in detail about Orientalism. In ancient Greece, Aeschylus's play, The Persians, is perhaps the first indication of Orientalism. Persians is an Orientalist play where the Greeks are talking about the Persians from an Orientalist perspective. In the 17th century, there was European Enlightenment, with the colonization of the Arab world. Both these resulted in new perspectives on the Orient. I forgot to use the slides which have pictures in it. Should I use it? The slides with pictures? Give me a minute. I'll close this and bring it. All right, ready? This is completely new layout, but you will understand if there are the pictures. By the 19th century, much of the Ottoman Empire was colonized. 17th century, in the period of European Enlightenment, there was colonization of the Arab world, Orientalism began. By the 19th century, much of the Ottoman Empire was colonized. The whites were ruling over the Ottoman Empire. Once upon a time, the Ottoman Empire was very dominant. Now, the Europeans imagined the Arabs and their culture in an exaggerated and distorted manner. The Europeans imagined that the Arabs are extremely violent, they're extremely this, extremely that. It was not reality. It was exaggerated and distorted. Examples are 19th century European Orientalist art and photographs. I will explain by showing the images. Images from the Great Exhibition of London, that is another example. All these show the Westerners' exaggerated or distorted understanding of the Orient. Postcards depicting Algerian women circulated by colonial Frenchmen. All these are examples of iconography where Europeans imagined the Orientals in an exaggerated manner and created and propagated stereotypes. The stereotype that the Orient is timeless, stagnant or without progress. That is one important stereotype. The Orient is strange. Black magicians, witches, snake charmers, these are all examples of the Orient being strange. Also, the Orient is exotic. Orient has sensuous, mystic beauty. And Eastern men are effeminate. Eastern men are effeminate. Easterners are like women. They are not masculine. These are all major stereotypes. Look at the iconography. Algerian women, either completely dressed or seductive and sexy. Symbols of sexuality and commodification of women. This woman is just lounging, waiting for her lover, probably. These are exhibits in the Great Exhibition of London. See, this is the Turkish exhibit. Turkey is exhibited here. It is decked up like an Oriental bazaar. This is only a painting of that exhibition. It is decked up like an Oriental bazaar, stereotypical. The Orient is represented as all the stereotyped fineries of the Orient, including the exploits of hunting. Hunting was a very important colonial activity. And people are dressed up as Indians and made to stand there. So, Orientalist art of the 19th century stereotyped the Orient as exotic, colorful, and sensual. And it concentrated on Near Eastern Islamic cultures, as those were the ones visited by artists. The artists visited Near Eastern Islamic cultures. And these places were depicted. The Arabs were, when you say Orientalism, usually you mean Arabs, not Indians. The French artists like Eugene Delacroix, Jean Jerome, Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, all of them painted many works depicting Islamic culture, often including lounging female slaves or odalisques. They stressed both lassitude or lethargy and visual spectacle. They stressed both lethargy and visual spectacle. You know, characters are always lethargic. Characters always engaged in visual spectacle, spectacular things happening, like fighting, bloody bodies, showing off nudity, etc. Look at this spectacular scenery, Orientalist, The Massacre at Chios by Eugene Delacroix. Another spectacular painting, The Raft of the Medusa. Orientalists are always lounging and see all these people lying around. Again, lounging women. Eugene Delacroix, The Women of Algiers. Very famous painting. Jean-Auguste Dominique Ingres, The Turkish Bath. Very famous again. Now, Orientalism draws on Foucault and Gramsci. Orientalism is a discourse of power and knowledge and hegemony. How power works on us, how power and knowledge are in an excess, how hegemony works. The Orient is a stereotype. First and foremost, a Western construction rather than a reality. Orientalism is not about the reality of the Easterners. It is about how the Westerner constructs the image of the Orient. What we see in these paintings is not the reality, but the construction of the Westerner. Orientalism exposes Eurocentric universalism that takes for granted white superiority. Eurocentric universalism, that means Europeans have some universal ideas that takes for granted white superiority. Blacks are bad, whites are great. All these ideas. Orientalism is the European cultural tradition of defining and identifying the East as other and inferior to the West. The European cultural tradition of identifying the East as other. The East becomes the other and inferior to the West. That is what Orientalism is about. Are you following me, everyone? Now let me unmute you. I have not unmuted you for a long time. Talk to me.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, you told about a book written by Edward Said. After beginnings, 1975, what did you tell, ma'am? I could not write down that.
On late style.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello,
Ma'am.
ma'am. Ma'am, can you please send us this PDF also?
With the pictures.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, pitfalls of national unconscious. This is the chapter in black skin.
Unconscious.
Yeah, ma'am. Unconscious.
Nahi. Pitfalls of national consciousness.
Okay. This is the chapter in which book, ma'am? Black skin, white mask, or wretched of the earth.
Wretched of the earth.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
Ma'am, What is the meaning of Phoenicians?
Phoenicians.
Yes, ma'am.
They are people in the past. Phoenicia. Phoenician sailor, remember, in wasteland?
Okay, ma'am.
Ma'am, what is escape from persecution in purposes of colonialism?
I didn't understand. Say that again slowly.
Is escape from persecution in purposes of colonialism. In the first slide.
Escape from persecution.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that means in the Jacobean period, the Puritans were persecuted and they escaped from it and went to America and colonized America.
Okay,
You
ma'am.
understand?
And I have again a doubt, that is, what is actual material practices? Would you please define it? Okay.
Things to do with objects, material life, not abstract ideas.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, muting you. Three definitions he gives for Orientalism. Orientalism is an academic field in the West. Remember, William Jones came and studied Indian, Sanskrit, etc. Many Indians, many Westerners came to India and studied India. It is called Indology. So that is Orientalism. Indology is Orientalism, an academic field in the West, rooted in 19th century pseudo-scientific theories of race. In the 19th century, there were many pseudo-scientific theories proving that white people are above black people. Theories proving that white people are above black people in a supposedly scientific manner. That is called pseudo-scientific theories. Orientalism is defined as a way of seeing the world based upon the distinctions between the East and the West. So Orientalism is an academic field like Indology. Orientalism is a way of seeing the world based on what is Eastern and Western. Orientalism is a Western style of hegemony. Hegemony means exercising power over you, ruling over you. Orientalism is a Western style of hegemony, a Western style of dominating, restructuring, and having authority over the Orient. Dominating over the Orient, restructuring, having authority over the Orient. It will be clear to the reader that by Orientalism, I mean several things, all of them, in my opinion, interdependent. The most readily accepted designation for Orientalism is an academic one. The most important meaning is an academic meaning. And indeed, the label still serves in a number of academic institutions. Department of Oriental, this thing like that, Oriental studies, like that, there will be. Anyone who teaches, writes about, or researches the Orient. It can be an anthropologist, sociologist, historian, philologist, is an Orientalist. And what he says is Orientalism. That is one meaning. The Orient is not an adjunct to Europe. It is not an addition. It is also the place of Europe's greatest and richest and oldest colonies, the source of its civilizations and languages. All of Europeans, everything in Europe came from the Orient ultimately. Its cultural contestant. Orient is also the cultural contestant of Europe. It is one of the deepest and most recurring images of the other. Orient is one of the deepest and most recurring images of the other. In addition, the Orient has helped to define Europe as its contrasting image, idea, personality, experience. So the Orient is the other, the opponent, the enemy. At the same time, Orient is defining the West. Orient is what the West is not. Yet none of this Orient is merely imaginative. Orient is it is not just an imagination. Orient is an integral part of the material civilization of Europe, the culture of Europe. For example, when an Englishman drinks tea, that is Orient. It is from the East that tea went to Europe. An Englishman, when he does printing, it is Orient because it is from Korea that printing went. When an Englishman uses silk, it is Orient. When an Englishman uses zero, it is Orient. It is part of the material civilization and culture of Europe. Everything has somehow come from the East. Orientalism expresses and represents that part culturally and even ideologically as a mode of discourse with supporting institutions. You have to take your time and read all this carefully, because I want you to get used to all these languages, the language of theory. Otherwise, you won't be able to answer any, not only theory question. No question you will be able to answer properly if you don't understand the words and way in which they are asking. So the Orient is a projection of those aspects of the Occident. Occident means West. Orient means East. The Orient is a projection of those aspects of the West which the Westerners do not wish to acknowledge in themselves. Remember, yesterday I told you, when you come home, I say, oh, my son has dirtied the room. Actually, both of us are dirty. My son is disordered. I am also disordered. But I always say, my son dirtied the room, to show that I am not like that. So the Orient becomes a projection of those aspects of the Occident which the Westerners do not wish to acknowledge in themselves. The Westerner attributes the Easterner with cruelty, decadence, sensuality, laziness, everything, so that it will look like the Occidental or the Westerner has none of these qualities. We are all safe. The East is seen as either exotic or demonic. Exotic other, demonic other. The East is seen as a fascinating realm of the exotic, the mystical, the seductive, the exotic other. The East is also seen as dangerous, sensual, and violent, the demonic other. The Orient is seen by the Westerner as homogeneous. They're all the same. Don't you see in Western movies, like Gandhi movie, for example? When Indians are shown, they are all like cattle, like the masses without identity. When Easterners are depicted, they are the masses. When Westerners are depicted, they are very individuals. You never see masses in Western, about movies about Westerners usually, because they are all people with identity, face. They are individuals, whereas Orientals are all homogeneous, anonymous, masses. Actions and emotions of the Orientals are judged racially. Because they are Indians, they must be like this. Because they are Japanese, they must be like this. This is racially. Orientalism enables the political, cultural, and social domination of the West. The West is dominating politically, culturally, socially, not just during colonial times, but also in the present. The book Orientalism begins with two epigraphs, one from Karl Marx, the other from Benjamin Disraeli's Tancred. They cannot represent themselves. They must be represented. That is one major statement from Karl Marx. The East is a carrier. That is from Benjamin Disraeli's Tancred. There are two kinds of Orientalism, latent and manifest. Latent Orientalism means the unconscious, untouchable positivity or certainty regarding what the Orient is. When the Westerner comes to India, he has a certain certainty. I know Hinduism means elephants, idol worship. I know what your food is. It means chili, spices. I know what your festivals are. Westerners have a certain certainty, an unconscious positivity regarding what the Orient is. Like the adult has a certain confidence about what the child is. I know, I will handle the child. I know how to deal with the child. A very male chauvinistic man will say, she is just a woman. I know how to handle her. So that is like latent Orientalism. They automatically have a certainty, the Westerners, that the West is eccentric, backward, sensual, passive. the unanimous, stable perceptions of the Orient. Unanimous. Everybody agrees. Yeah. Stable perceptions of the Orient. In our movies, until recently, we would always depict in Hindi movies. We would depict South Indians or black people, Dalits, etc., as either very funny or criminals, or everybody accepted it. Everybody accepted it. Yeah, he's South Indian, so he must be a joker. He's South Indian, that means he must be a servant. He is Dalit, that means he doesn't know anything. You know, that is called the unanimous, stable perception. The Westerners have a unanimous perception of the Orient. Like India had a unanimous, even South Indians used to laugh seeing the South Indian servant in all Bollywood movies. The South Indian will speak in a very Tamil accent of Hindi and it will create laughter. We will also laugh. South Indians will also laugh because it is unanimous. The perception is unanimous and stable that South Indian means joker. Orient means lazy. You understand? But we have changed now. Manifest Orientalism is different. The stated views about Oriental society, languages, history, sociology, you know, the information that is changing, the studies that are changing, the knowledge that is changing, that is Manifest Orientalism. Contemporary Orientalism is there. Neo-Orientalism, we can say. Islamophobia is a manifestation of Orientalism. In the West, Islam is always represented as a pale imitation of Christianity. Not like that in Asia or Africa. But in the West, where Christianity predominates, Islam is represented as an imitation of Christianity because Islam came later. Islam, I'm not saying everybody does, but mainstream earlier perceptions was that Islam is fraudulent. Christianity is proper, Islam is not so proper. This translated as the fear of Islam in the 18th, 19th centuries. In the 20th and 21st century, there is a contemporary neo-Orientalist who looks at the Orient or Islam with suspicion. There is a support system of staggering power based on the myths that Orientalism propagates, says Said. Orientalism has already propagated myths. Arabs are violent, Muslims are like this, like that. Muslims are ignorant, they are unreasonable, they are dirty, they are, you know, anything you can say, negative. All these myths are already propagated by Orientalism, and for the neo-Orientalist or the Islamophobic man, it becomes a support system. Orientalism is a support system. They write with authority about the Oriental Arab world. He says, Said is Oriental, of course, and he is Muslim also. So Western debates envision Islam and Muslim communities as the negative other. There is a book by Chris Allen called Islamophobia. Said's views on Orientalism have been controversial and they have been critiqued also. Said generalizes and homogenizes Western views. Said is not talking about the heterogeneity of Westerners. He is homogenizing the Westerners. That is one criticism. He is accused of politicizing Middle Eastern studies. Middle Eastern studies is a good discipline, actually. He politicized it. Aijaz Ahmad criticized Said, and Occidentalism emerged as a reaction to Orientalism. Remember, do some reading on your own, I'm reminding you. Now we'll talk about Spivak and Homi K. Bhabha. Gayatri Chakrabarti Spivak was born in Calcutta, educated in Indian and American university, student of Paul D. Mann, wrote a lengthy preface to translated and wrote a lengthy preface to Derrida's Of Grammatology. She translated Of Grammatology. It is a book that critiques Western philosophical traditions. She also translated Mahashweta Devi's stories, draws on post-colonialism, and many contemporary theories. In Other Worlds, Essays in Cultural Politics, very important book by Gayatri Spivak. Can the Subaltern Speak, as you know, is a 1983 essay. It is also later printed in 1988. Three Women's Texts and a Critique of Imperialism. That is another important text. I already told you. She talked about White Sargasso Sea, then Jane Eyre and Frankenstein. A critique of post-colonial reason toward a history of the vanishing present, death of a discipline. These are important. In Other Worlds, Essays in Cultural Politics, uses insights from Marxism, feminism, and deconstruction, analyzes the relationship between language, women, culture in both Western and non-Western contexts. Can the Subaltern Speak is an essay that later appeared in a critique of post-colonial reason. Can people in subordinate colonized positions achieve a voice? That is the main issue she raises. Can people in subordinate colonized positions achieve a voice? Can they ever find their voice to speak for themselves? This is a critique of the essentialist foundations of the Subaltern Studies group in India. Even though she was also part of the Subaltern Studies group, it is a feature of contemporary theory to criticize itself. Are you paying attention? Contemporary theory always criticizes itself. So she critiques the essentialist foundations of Subaltern Studies. These are the major people involved in it. She's saying if these people keep on talking for the subaltern, will the subaltern ever speak for itself? Then she takes the term epistemic violence from Michel Foucault. Epistemic means pertaining to knowledge. In a critique of post-colonial reason, Spivak talks about epistemic violence pertaining to knowledge. The colonial project, colonizer ruling over us, is characterized by epistemic violence, the term from Foucault. It is the imposition of a set of beliefs on another. The English people come and say, Indians, you have nothing to teach yourself. You don't know anything. We will teach you. Imposition of a set of beliefs on another. Certain knowledges, such as the Hindu legal system. You know, our knowledges were not accepted as knowledges. They were all subjugated and disqualified as inadequate. They were turned into unknowledge. Clear? Whatever knowledge Indians had or Native Americans had, etc., became no knowledge, unknowledge. Macaulay famously in the Minute on Education says, Indians have no knowledge. Everything is, all knowledge is in English, it seems. Then, following Foucault, Spivak asserts that the colonial subject is irretrievably heterogeneous. You can't talk of the colonized people or the colonial subaltern as one thing. They are all heterogeneous, diverse. The colonized people are not one. They can't be talked about as one. She problematizes the simple binary opposition between the colonizer and colonized, the oppressor and victim. Remember, she is post-structuralist. She does not believe in a binary opposition, colonizer versus colonized. It is not as simple as that. The colonized people are so diverse. Even radical intellectuals speak for the subaltern as if they are one homogeneous category. Even they essentialize and romanticize the subaltern. She's against it. She says that even great intellectuals are homogenizing the subaltern, talking about the subaltern in an essentialist and romantic manner. She is against it. The intellectual is complicit in the persistent constitution of the other as the self's shadow. The intellectual is complicit. The intellectual is complicit means agreeing to. Even though the subaltern studies, the intellectuals are doing a good thing, they are complicit. That means they are agreeing to the constitution of the black other as the shadow of the white people. The black other becomes the shadow of the self. The black other becomes the shadow of the whites. Even the subaltern people, the subaltern studies theorists are complicit in this. They are propagating the same problem. The essay, Can the Subaltern Speak, ends with the story of Bhubaneshwari Bhaduri, a silenced subaltern. Gayatri Spivak shows that she herself had a relative, Bhubaneshwari Bhaduri. She was pregnant. In the times of political struggle, people wanted Bhubaneshwari Bhaduri to, at that time, to do something political, but she did not want to do it. Ultimately, she committed suicide. She burned herself. She committed suicide. But then, even in her rebellion, even in her refusal to comply, even in her suicide, she did not possess her death. All the politicians and people came and created their own stories regarding her death. It was stated that she was not pregnant. I mean, these people said that she was pregnant, I think. That it was not her husband's child or something. That is why she committed suicide, it seems. Even rebellion was denied to her. She was not even successful in her rebellion. She was a subaltern who could never speak, because all the time other people were speaking for her, even after her death. Did you understand? The essay is subtitled Speculations on Widow's Sacrifice. She was a widow, actually, not pregnant, sorry. She was a widow. And people said that she's a widow and she got pregnant. That is why she committed suicide. That is not the reason at all. In three women's texts and a critique of imperialism, that is the full title. It is a post-colonial essay where she studies white Sargasso, Jane Eyre, and Frankenstein. And she introduces the term worlding. Jane Eyre appears as a prototype of a feminist text, showing a strong woman character. Okay, good. Jane Eyre has a strong woman character, good. But it is at the expense of Bertha. Bertha has to be the colonial subject. The Creole woman from Jamaica, the colonial subject. It is because such a character is there that Jane Eyre appears a strong woman character. She is fully white and strong. Did you understand? She is a strong white woman character who becomes strong and central to the text. She committed suicide during her menstrual period. Correct. It is her birthday today, oh really? And it is at the expense of Bertha that Jane Eyre appears a strong woman character. Second problem in Jane Eyre is St. John Rivers wants to marry Jane Eyre and take her as missionary's wife to India to propagate the colonial project. The missionary, St. John Rivers, wants to take Jane Eyre to India as part of colonialism. Jane Eyre rejects his love and proposal. Jane Eyre rejects his proposal, but she doesn't question. She doesn't question. Jane Eyre doesn't question St. John Rivers's involvement in colonialism. The imperialism is unquestioned. So imperialism is in a worlding process. That means it is like naturalization. Imperialism is naturalized or worlded. Worlding is the process by which imperialism disguises itself as natural. In White Sargasso Sea, Spivak focuses on the character Christophine, Antoinette's good Creole nurse, who is an Obeah woman. Obeah means she practices black magic. Antoinette's nurse is Christophine. She is Jamaican. She practices black magic. She gets into trouble with the law, and her story remains incomplete. Like Malvolio, she is silenced. What happened to her is not clear. Christophine is the silenced stereotype of the Creole woman. And then Spivak focuses on Frankenstein's monster. Benita Parry, did you watch 10 p.m. live yesterday? In 10 p.m. live, I had said that Benita Parry questioned this Spivak's reading of White Sargasso. Frankenstein's monster represents the uncivilized other, whose histories are denied and destroyed by colonialism. The Frankenstein's monster is like a colonial other. Colonialism has a devastating impact on those it tries to create anew. Colonialism has a devastating impact on the colonized people. All these are examples of worlding. Next, we'll talk about Homi Ke Bhaba. Talk to me.
Ma'am, could you please explain the term worlding, please?
Worlding is the process by which imperialism appears as natural. It's okay, natural. It's naturalization of imperialism.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else?
Ma'am, what is Occidentalism?
Western, the opposite of Orientalism. Showing that Occident has been constructed by the Orient.
Okay, ma'am.
The West is a construction of the Orient. Orient defines West in certain ways.
So, ma'am, can the subaltern speak? Can we give answer in yes or no? They can speak for themselves.
Why do you want to answer in yes or no? It is
Because
nothing.
because the title is in
yes
question.
or no. Everything is very complex.
And because
People-
the heading is in question, na? Can the subaltern speak? It's question mark.
No, it actually shows that it can't be answered in yes or no.
Yes, some questions
It's
are
a
not to be,
complicated issue. Huh?
some questions are not to be answered. No? Like John Keats.
It's ambivalent, that is the word.
Yes.
Ma'am, so Orientalism has a connoted like negative term, derogatory word, right?
Yes.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
And what the questions called, can the spring be far behind? John Keats' poem Ode to Autumn.
What?
The line is John Keats' poem, from John Keats' poem Ode to Autumn, I think. Can the spring be far behind? The
Yes.
question, type of question. What is the type of question we are saying? We are we are not expecting any answer. I think answer is in the question.
Rhetorical question.
Yes, rhetorical. Yes. Rhetorical. This is rhetorical question, no? Can the subaltern speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Creole woman. Creole woman. Oh, you are asking in chat box. I didn't see. I'm not putting water on my eyes. It is a gel. It feels very good from Biotic. I really, it's effective, I think. Creole woman is a mixed caste woman. White plus West Indian. Oh, Spivak was born on 24th February. I think she said Bhubaneshwari Baduri's birthday. Did you say that, Ankita? That's what I understood. Not Spivak's birthday.
Ma'am, is now somebody asked about Commonwealth literature is now a bad term. Why it is that? Did somebody also ask that?
Commonwealth literature defines us as erstwhile colonies of England. That is why. Commonwealth means what? Erstwhile colonies of England. It is like, suppose a woman gets divorced from her husband. Okay? Mrs. Sharma, she was. Mrs. Sharma gets divorced. If you call her ex Mrs. Sharma, how it will be?
Okay.
Calling us Commonwealth is like calling us ex Mrs. Sharma.
But the new term is like third world or something. That's again like
No, no,
the
no. Third world is also a bad term.
and that
It is not used. It is post-colonial. Even post-colonial is problematic.
no, for
I don't know.
ma'am, after Commonwealth they were using third world. No, ma'am.
That is also a bad word I'm saying.
Okay, okay. I thought that is something new word. I felt it was both
Third
same.
world is not after. It was there already.
Okay, okay.
Commonwealth originated in the 17th century. Na? Commonwealth.
Yeah.
I can't teach you, talk to you about Benita Parry without reading. I'm sorry. I'm not in a position to elaborate on that.
Ma'am, Salman Rushdie also talked about Commonwealth literature, na?
He said Commonwealth literature does not exist.
Does not exist, huh? This is a statement, na?
Because it is not one literature, you know. You can't define Commonwealth literature as one literature. There is no unity there. It is very diverse and heterogeneous and always in the state of becoming.
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, I have to mute you to teach you further. Homi Ke Baba. Homi Ke Baba was a Parsi born in Bombay, and all his theory came from his identity as a Parsi. You know, his otherness, his hybridity. He was educated in India and Oxford, taught in England, America, and now Harvard. Nation and Narration is an important 1990 work. It's edited by him. Of Mimicry and Man, the Ambivalence of Colonial Discourse. That is another major essay. The Location of Culture, another important book. We will talk a little bit about concepts from here. His work was associated with Screen Magazine on semiotics and representation, where he also developed the concept of third space. Now, hybridity is the state of in-betweenness. We are hybrid because we are colonized people. At the same time, we are also like colonizers. You know, neo-imperialism is there now. The multinational corporations are ruling over us. There is colonization. We are colonized by American corporations. But at the same time, we are also acting like them. So this is why we are in between. Homi Baba himself is an example. The emergence of new cultural forms within multiculturalism. Within multiculturalism, because of confluence of cultures, there is hybridity that emerges, cultural plurality that emerges. This idea was influenced by Said, challenging the notions of fixed identity and binary opposition. The idea that identity is fixed. Identity should be understood as binary oppositions, either this or that. That is challenged. And he lays emphasis on language and discourse. Language creates identity. It is multi-pronged. It has many dimensions. It is like a discourse identity. It is not just one thing. It is always changing. Nation and culture are not unified, coherent entities. Culture and nation are not unified. They are not coherent. They are always in a state of flux. They are changing. All this is related to the concept of hybridity. Examples, dekho. Racial hybridity can be seen in Anglo-Indians and mestizos. Mestizos are Latino-Americans, half-breed people. Linguistic hybridity can be seen in Pidgin and Creole. When English went to West Indies, West Indian languages combined with English in funny ways, creating a temporary language called Pidgin. Later, Pidgin was changed into proper languages called Creole, with grammar, with spelling, everything, it becomes Creole. Creole is the first language of people. Pidgin is like an interim temporary language. Then literary hybridity, magic realism, post-colonialism, writing back to the center, like White Sargassoti based on Jane Eyre, Amy Cesar's Une Temte based on tempest. These are all examples of literary hybridity. In literature, different elements combine to create new elements. Then cultural hybridity is there. Fusion cuisine, Chinese and Indian cuisine fuse, fusion music, mixing of British and Indian culture in passage to India. This is also an example of mimicry. How some Indians imitate the British. So we'll come to that. The commitment to theory is an essay by Homi Bhabha from The Location of Culture. Here Bhabha responds to charges made against literary theory. Literary theory was attacked in Bhabha's time. And the attack was that literary theory is Eurocentric. It is an imperialist discourse. Literary theory is helping imperialism. These were the charges. Another charge was that literary theory is far removed from the real concerns of third world people. Literary theory is not about third world people. It is always Eurocentric. Bhabha questions all this. Bhabha is supporting theory, questions this binarism. You can't think of binaries like theory versus politics, oppressor versus oppressed, nothing like that. Bhabha says theoretical discourses are characterized by hybridity and ambivalence. You can't just compartmentalize them. They can't be true or false, right or wrong. That is the meaning. Theory and political critique, he says, are necessary. Literary theory is necessary. Literary theory is effective. Not because theory maintains rigid oppositions. Don't think of either or, binary oppositions. That is why when you say whether you answer yes or no, it shows that you are not employing a theoretical perspective. Nothing can be binary oppositions. There are no rigid oppositions. There are always ambivalences. They overcome the given grounds of opposition and open up a space of translation. Theory opens up a space of hybridity. It is not either this or that, good or evil. It is a space of hybridity. Such a language of theory is dialectical. Bhabha's example is, I don't know how to explain this, but he gave this example. The miners' strike in Margaret Thatcher's Britain was given as an example where it was not just either or, but a new reality that came into being. Again, Hegel's dialectics can be applied here. The idea is that it appears simply as a case of class struggle, but what emerged is a new thing. I mean, it was not like right or wrong. When miners' wives were interviewed, they questioned the very culture they were defending. They criticized their own culture. The miners' culture are fighting for their culture, but they are also criticizing their culture. So it is a new thing. It is a very hybrid, new reality that emerges. It is not a simple either or situation. Then the concept of ambivalence. Culture consists of opposing perceptions and dimensions. In culture, there are oppositions. Yes, of course there are, even though it is not either or, there are oppositions, and it creates a split in the identity of the colonized other. Why? Because, as I told you, because we are hybrid. We are both colonized as well as colonizer. There is a split in the identity of the colonized other. Colonial power is characterized by belatedness. What do you mean by that? Macaulay is not all powerful. Macaulay wants Indians to speak English. Only then he will be all powerful. When Robinson Crusoe is living in that island, he is like a king, but he has no subjects. Only goats and cats. Then Friday comes. That is when he really becomes like a king. Friday comes, other people come. Friday's father and other relatives come. Then he becomes like a king. That means the colonizer needs the colonized. Otherwise, he is not all powerful. His power is belated. He is not quite powerful until he gets a colonized person. A man becomes all powerful only when he has a wife under him. Colonial power is characterized by belatedness, means colonial power needs colonized people in order to be all powerful. Did you understand that? It is belated. Colonial symbols of authority and power get their meaning only after the traumatic scenario of cultural difference. Colonial symbols get meaning only after cultural difference. Robinson Crusoe, again think, Robinson Crusoe gets meaning as a king, he becomes only after Friday comes and the cultural difference between Crusoe and Friday is highlighted. Talk to me, did you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Muting you. So ambivalence is because colonizer needs the colonized. Otherwise, the colonizer is not all powerful. His power is always belated. Cultural differences against cultural diversity, he talked about. Cultural diversity views culture as an object of empirical knowledge, which pre-exists the knower. Suppose you go to America, you go to USA. When you go to USA, already cultural diversity is there in USA. From your experience, from your empirical knowledge, you understand, wow, USA is so culturally diverse. We can get Chinese food, Japanese food, Ukrainian food, Madagascar food, anything you want, you can get here. It is so culturally diverse, isn't it? Cultural diversity views culture as an object of empirical knowledge. Empirical knowledge means experiential knowledge, from your experience. And that experience, that knowledge, that diversity pre-exists the knower. Even before you go there, it is existing. Cultural difference views culture not as a pre-given. Cultural difference is not already there. Cultural difference is when you meet an American, you and the American become friends. And after that only, you realize your difference between each other. Cultural difference is the point at which two or more cultures meet discursively. Cultural diversity is already there. Even if we are not there, it is there. Cultural difference is there only if we are there. Did you understand? We feel different from somebody else. Only then cultural difference comes. So he says cultural difference is better. It's more important because at the point of cultural difference, culture is enunciated or expressed. Culture is expressed at the point of cultural difference. And he values cultural difference more than cultural diversity. Did you understand, everyone? Clear that one? Cultural difference is what we create in our relationships. Cultural diversity is already there, even if we are not there. Through enunciation, enunciation means expression. Through enunciation, cultural difference is recognized. Cultural difference is recognized only when we express our cultures. Even if we don't go to America, we know America is culturally diverse. We don't need to see the expression. Even otherwise, we know America is diverse. But only if we meet an American and express our difference, only then. For example, in Passage to India, the cultural difference between Aziz and Cyril Fielding is enunciated. The cultural difference between Aziz and Cyril Fielding is enunciated. At the beginning, they did not experience any problem. But when they got to know each other, when they became friends, when this problem was created, when they understood that their response to Adila is different, how Aziz responds to Adila is not how Fielding responds to Adila. At that point, their cultural difference is enunciated. This is how you do research. When you read a book, these ideas, these concepts can be brought in like this. Did you understand? All these concepts can be invaluable in research, but only if you understand. Otherwise, you won't be able to write. Now, what happened? Then mimicry. Wait. Mimicry. Baba says colonized people imitate the culture of the colonizers. We eat their food. We dress like them. We speak their language. We adopt their politics. Colonized people imitate the culture of the colonizers in language, dress, politics, cultural attitudes. This reflects the colonizers' desire for a reformed or recognizable other. Macaulay wanted Indians to be a reformed, recognizable other, almost the same, but not quite. Suppose, it is a very bad example. I shouldn't say it. I will sound like a fundamentalist, but still. Suppose you decide to pick up a boy from the streets, a small boy from the streets without parents. You decide to not adopt, but give that boy some job, help him a little bit. Okay? He is wearing very dirty clothes. He is looking very emaciated and unhealthy. What will you first and foremost do? You will ask him, you will give him a bath. You will ask him to take bath, a shower. Well, if you are going to work here, you go take shower. There is a bathroom, you go take shower. Put on clothes similar to yours. Throw away your original clothes. Put on clothes that are like ours. Then he should also look like you. He should not look so unhealthy. You will give him food so that he will look healthier. Only then you will be able to deal with him. Only then he will be able to work for you. He should look like you, almost the same, but not quite. You are the colonizer, he is the colonized. You want him to be like you, isn't it? Otherwise, you can't deal with him. When Friday comes, Friday was completely different. He had his own language, culture, everything. What did Crusoe do first and foremost? Crusoe wanted Friday to speak like Crusoe, to dress like Crusoe. He even taught him Christianity. Because when Friday is pagan, Crusoe is afraid that Friday will kill Crusoe. He is afraid at the beginning of Friday. But when Friday becomes Christian, Crusoe thinks, now nothing will happen. Now Friday will not kill me. So it is the colonizer's fear. When the boy from the street looks like a street boy, continues to look like a street boy, you are afraid of him. You want him to look like you so that you won't be afraid. You can identify with him. The colonizer has a desire for a reformed, recognizable other. Almost the same, but not quite. This is the sign of double articulation, double vision, and it is ambivalent. Colonizer has a double articulation, double vision, ambivalence. I want them to be like me, but they cannot be like me. You understand? I am not like them, but I am defining myself through them. Mimicry is not just blind imitation of the colonizer. It is ambivalent and performative. When you give the street boy a bath and give him clean clothes, you are making him perform that class. He should perform that class to which you belong. It is ambivalent and performative. Gives the colonized subject partial presence. Mimicry is not just blind imitation. It is ambivalent, means double. Listen, if there is anybody who cannot understand all these words clearly, please understand that I also struggled. For years, I did not fully understand. If at that time I had given up studying literature and theory, at that time when I did not fully understand, I thought, I'm not understanding, I'm leaving, I can't do this, then I wouldn't have reached here. You have to be persistent. You have to continuously read and understand. I promise you, within a couple of months, you will be completely different from what you are if you follow my method. I know that you may not get all that time, but this PDF is not running away. When you have time, you do. I will push you a little bit and say, study now, because if you do that now, you will pass this exam. It'll be easier. I know none of these things they will ask in the exam. Why people are not passing in the exam is not because of lack of knowledge. It is also because of lack of understanding, lack of knowledge of language, lack of knowledge of how to think. If I give you 1 million pieces of information, you will not pass. If I give you one perspective, you might pass. You understand? So I am teaching you like this elaborately. It's a lot of strain for me also. What is my problem? I don't understand. Why should I teach you all these things, reading out, when I know that many of you are struggling? I could easily make it simple. I could easily make it very less complex, very simple. You will immediately understand, but I'm afraid it may not help you. Clear? That is why I'm struggling. You are also struggling. We are all struggling so that we'll have a better future. You will have a better future. I see myself in you. I know your struggle because I struggled in the same way. This is not a regular coaching center where I will somehow make you pass exam, because this is not an exam which you can somehow pass. You have to have real knowledge, thorough knowledge, which you will get by studying in 2 years in a big university, in a good central university. If you study, then you will get that kind of knowledge. Possibly. Sometimes even not, that is not enough. So that kind of 2 years of university level teaching is what I'm trying to do in 3 months or 4 months. Okay. So we are going in the right track. You will understand. Just keep on reading, listening more. Slowly, slowly, just trust me. Whatever you can, you do. That is enough. So mimicry is not blind imitation. Mimicry is ambivalent, means double. Mimicry, when I put on jeans, I am not just blindly imitating. I am both showing my power as well as their power. I have the power to wear your clothes. I have the power to speak your language. I will speak your language my way. That is there in mimicry. At the same time, wow, your language is so great. I want to speak it. That is also there. Everything in literary theory is ambivalent in a way. Not binary opposites, but ambivalence, multiple. And mimicry is performative. When I speak English, I am performing mimicry. I am performing that identity. I am performing that ambivalence. When I wear Western clothes or eat pizza, I am performing that ambivalence. I am Indian, very Indian. But still, I will eat pizza if I want to. Ambivalent and performative, giving the colonized subject partial presence. It involves attraction as well as repulsion. Please understand that Homi Bhabha is one of the most obscure theorists. It is not easy to understand what he says. It is a huge blessing for you. I know what I'm doing. It's a huge blessing for you that I have put it in such simple words, and I'm explaining it in a simple way that you can understand. It is not as easy as that. So take it positively. Okay? Mimicry is subversive. An Indian excessively obsessed with some aspect of English culture, maybe an Indian obsessed with speaking English, or an Indian obsessed with watching English movies, etc., shows how hollow that aspect of English culture is. That is also there, because mimicry exposes the artificiality of what is being mimicked. English is such real, great English is such a funny thing. Nothing is there. It is hollow. Because you speak real, great English, British man. I will speak it my way. My pronunciation is wrong. according to you. My grammar is wrong, my spelling is wrong. So what? I'm speaking it. If I am speaking it and communicating with it, it shows that all your pretension of English being great, received pronunciation, this, that is hollow. There is nothing great about English if anybody can speak it and communicate. It is our English. Don't be afraid of their accent and their language. It is artificial, it's hollow. Mimicry, that I speak English, exposes the artificiality of English language. Mimicry is subversive. Let us all speak English in our way. No problem. We will change it and use it our way. It shows that there is nothing so permanent about English. Clear, everyone? Mimicry exposes the artificiality of what is being mimicked. In A Passage to India, there is a minor character called Amrit Rao, a lawyer from Calcutta. He has learned enough of British law. He is Indian, but he knows English law. And he is using English law the British way. He is doing a mimicry of English law. This foreign educated, English speaking mimic man terrifies the British in India. V.S. Naipaul's Mimic Men is about this kind of mimicry. When we imitate them, they become terrified. Because it shows that we can get away with our imitation. We can do it in whatever way we want. It shows that all their pretensions of greatness is actually hollow. The English-speaking mimic man, Amrit Rao, terrifies the British in India. Got it? There is also reverse mimicry. When Kurtz goes native, or Kim, a white child, lives like an Indian, that is going native. Kim is an Irish orphan. He grows up on the streets of Lahore like an Indian. You know? That is going native, reverse mimicry. Then Bhabha's third space. It is different from the concept of Edward Soya. Edward Soya also talked about third space. Edward Soya said that first space is space seen from a skyscraper. Second space is space that is seen in a representation like photograph. Third space is lived reality. First space means space seen from a skyscraper or in Google Map. Second space means space represented in a photograph. Third space means lived reality. If you want to come to Kerala, you will first look it up in Google. That is first space. Then you will look up Google Images, pictures. That is second space. When you come and live here only, you will understand third space. That is Bhabha's third space. Third space of enunciation. That is what Soya's third space. What I said now is Edward Soya's third space. Now I am going to talk about Bhabha's third space. Third space of enunciation is the liminal meetings. Liminal means in between. The liminal meeting space of the colonizer and the colonized, combining the elements of both cultures. The colonizer and colonized meet, and that space is called the third space of enunciation. I will explain with example after reading. It refers to a post-colonial identity and community realized through language or education. A post-colonial identity, like a hybrid space is third space. Something different but recognizable, a new area of negotiation of meaning and representation. I emigrate to America. I become an American immigrant and I attend university. In the university, a white teacher comes to teach. The white teacher is in his space. The university is his, he's a teacher there. But the university is also mine. I am the colonized person. It is also mine. I am also there. The classroom where the white man, the white teacher meets the Indian immigrants will be the third space of enunciation. Our identities get expressed there. Enunciation means expression. It is an in-between space where both of our cultures meet. This is mine, but different. This university is mine, but not mine, different. For him also, all Americans are feeling like this now. The white Americans thought America is white. But now, more than whites, there are other people. So America is like third space now, where Americans are feeling this is my country, but not quite. It is different. There is a new negotiation of meaning and representation needed. All players in third space are hybrid because it is a meeting point. In another way, if I explain, classroom, okay, teacher, first 2-3 benches, 2-3 rows, they are all mainstream classroom. The people in the back bench are not part of the classroom. They are meeting, they are in the classroom, but they are also doing other things there. They are third space. In third space, there is rebellion possible. A space where the powerless plot their rebellion, like the backbench, like the corners of a tavern. Did you understand? In education, where alternate learning takes place through play or co-curricular activities, that is third space. A mobile app can be third space. It is not the mainstream, but the margin of the mainstream. Shopping malls, which are neither home or office, can be third space. It is where the formal and the informal meet. It is where there is an element of the carnivalesque because it is the margin. I hope you understood. Did you understand? I am unmuting you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Tea party in a passage to India. You mean the bridge party. You can say it is third. In the bridge party, yeah, you can say, because some of the reality of the Indians and the English people are getting revealed there. You can say social media is third space because some of the online class is also a third space. Baba did not talk about first, second, and third space. He only talked about third space, which is not the home space or the official space. He did not talk about the other spaces. This is your picture, okay? I know. Is this your picture? Is this what you're feeling? You don't think it's your picture? I felt like this is your picture. डूब रही हूँ लेकिन somehow.
उम्मीद है.
Singing. And this is also, if that is not your picture, then this is your picture, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Somewhat.
Huh? Will you read all these terms and let me know if you don't understand? Read about all these terms.
Yes, ma'am.
Like little bit of homework I'm giving. 3 days holidays, remember? Something happened. I can't teach you tomorrow morning. Did you make any arrangement? I forgot to tell you. Can I teach you Monday morning instead?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I will reschedule and tell you, okay, that early morning class, not tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Please
Okay,
read all
ma'am.
this. If you don't understand, you will ask me, I'll explain, okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Agency. I'm not reading everything. Agency is whether the non-European has the right to do things, say things, to make choices, that is agency. Whether the black person has agency to act. Did you understand? Loss of agency leads to violence. When we are denied the opportunity to act, to speak, to make choices, that leads to violence. Then apartheid means separation. In South Africa, the black people were separated from the white spaces. Remember when Mahatma Gandhi went and lived there, he was not allowed to get into some trains. That is apartheid. Apartheid went on for years. And our Nelson Mandela famously fought against it. He was put in prison for 27 years. Then Black Atlantic, coined by Paul Gilroy. All the people, the black people across the Atlantic Ocean, the black people in Europe, the black people in Africa, the black people in America, they are all like one nation. They are all like one identity. The role of Africans in all these colonial empires, he's talking about, and unifying them, but not homogenizing them. It is against notions of national and racial purity. And this became a very important term in cultural studies. Example, Carol Phillip is such a writer who writes about the Black Atlantic. This is Europe, this is Africa, this is America, this is Atlantic Ocean. And this is related to cartography and ships. Maps are instruments of colonial appropriation. Colonizers ruled us because of the maps, and they continue to divide us even now because of maps. These are all things that I want you to read on. I have just given you. Terra nullius and terra incognita are two major concepts. When white people came to Africa, Asia, they said, America also, this is terra nullius, means nobody lives here. What about the Red Indians? They didn't even treat them as people. Terra incognita means it is unknown land. Incognita means unknown. And constructed models of civilization, climate, disease, all this were based on these maps. Crossing the boundary in the map was considered a big thing. Chutnification, used by Salman Rushdie, describing the indigenization of English language and history and preservation of memories. The post-colonial speakers' use of English is an example of how you chutnify English. And chutney becomes a method of preserving history, culture, identity. Pidgin can be an example of chutnification. Contrapuntal reading was a term used by Edward Said, borrowed from music. Said was the pianist also. It is similar to what Terry Eagleton called reading against the grain. Contrapuntal reading is reading the text by reading it in both ways. Looking at the prejudices, myths, and beliefs. Looking at it as a colonial text as well as a post-colonial, both ways. Chinua Achebe's, Heart of Darkness also can be read contrapuntally. It is an attack on colonialism. At the same time, it propagates colonialism, revealing hidden beliefs and perceives literary texts as active devices in making colonial, racial, patriarchal, and class hierarchies. How texts create these hierarchies. How there are hidden beliefs in texts. Then the diaspora. It is a Greek word meaning to disperse. Originally, it meant the dispersal of Jews beyond Israel. Now it denotes a similar range of cultural affiliations, connecting groups who have dispersed or migrated beyond national borders. We have Indian diaspora, all the Indians who live anywhere in the world. They're all part of Indian diaspora. It is against the concept of purity of culture, against the concept of binary opposites, we and them. Diasporic communities are held together in so many different ways: family, morality, manners, artistic traditions. And diaspora involves dislocation. Diaspora challenges essentialist notions of identity and nation. Diaspora critics are their major figures: William Safran, Robert Cohen, Ian Chambers, Vijay Mishra. Try to read a little more about them. There are diasporic writers also. I've given a list. What did they write? If you don't know, time to look up. Remember, I'm not teaching first BA students, even though I'm teaching from the basics. I'm teaching like I should teach a BA student. You are not first BA students. I'm supposed to teach students who already know a lot of things. So if I highlight some area that you don't know, all of you know a lot, I know. But if there is some area that you don't know that I highlight, then it is your responsibility to fill that gap. Did you understand? Otherwise, I will have to open a university and you will have to do MA course with me. That is the problem. Now, ethnicity. We are doing like a 4-month MA course here, more than an MA course actually. Ethnicity is a term used interchangeably with race. My ethnicity is that I am Indian. I am racially Indian. A group of people with shared beliefs, cultural practices, and even appearance. We talk of ethnic diasporas, such as Asian American, Black British, Chinese American. And sometimes they sell their ethnic identities as exotic. Kerala is a hub of tourists. Kerala sells its ethnic identity. We have Ayurveda, we have Kathakali, we have this, that. It is a kind of reorientalization. We adopt Oriental perspectives. Our tourism industry. You can do tourism-based research if you want. How tourism creates reorientalization images, reorientalized images. Writers of related to ethnicity are Jhumpa Lahiri, Amy Tan, they all express their ethnicity. The four worlds, the term of four worlds emerged during the Cold War. First world is capitalistic Western countries. Second world is socialist countries. Third world is post-colonial countries. Fourth world is populations without territory of their own, like the Aborigines. These terms are no longer used. They are bad words. Globalization is important. Post-colonial studies equates globalization with neo-imperialism. The multinational corporations are ruling over us. And this creates new forms of oppression. Okay, read this on your own. Magic realism is a kind of hybrid post-colonial style of writing, where dreams, supernatural elements, memories, magic, and everyday life are all commingled. Everyday life of a colonized or post-colonial society, the pre-colonial past creeps in, reality breaks down, narrative presents oppositional worldviews, etc. Examples I've given. Multiculturalism, condition of migrants, diaspora cultures, a society where several cultures coexist. That is a multicultural society. Related terms are acculturation, cultural plurality, cultural citizenship. Remember, I am not Google. You have to read on your own, find out. Don't ask me questions like, what is acculturation? This is like Google, define acculturation. You should not ask like that. You should read, try to understand, and say, when I read about acculturation, I found this. And then I got this doubt. Isn't that same as this or different from this? Like that doubt you should ask. Otherwise, the problem is people will think you are stupid. You should ask intelligent questions, not only to me, everywhere. Then you will sound like scholars. Always remember, will a person who studied in Harvard or Oxford, my students should be that standard, okay? Slowly, slowly you will become. Will a person who studied in Harvard or Oxford ask, what is acculturation? You understand what I'm saying? So raise your standards. We are no less than Central University students or people from international universities. We are also studying more or less the same things. Slowly, slowly, we will become like that. That culture we should develop. You know, great scholars, etc. Do not ask like that anybody. They will only find out. They will do research and find out. That is a sign of a great scholar. Otherwise, it is a sign of a student who is somehow mugging up and passing exam. We don't want to look like that. You should be, after this, you should be competent to be professor in a big university, or you should be competent to be an IAS officer. You know, that kind of intellectual standards we should have. This is what I learned from my international exposure and all that. So I'm sharing it with you. Negritude is a good word. Apartheid is a bad word. Negritude is a good word. Negritude is a movement that asserts and reasserts pride in African cultures. Africans should be proud of their Africanness. Pan-African Black consciousness they talked about. The Black intellectuals in France. There were many Black intellectuals who lived in France. Those people started negritude. People like Aimé Césaire, Leopold Sédar Senghor, Leon Damas. Okay? Then strategic essentialism, concept developed by Gayatri Spivak. You know, to say, I am a woman. A woman is different from man. A woman has to write like this. A woman needs women's writing. That is essentialist. To say I am something essentially is essentialist. That is against literary theory. I am a Dalit. Dalits need their own aesthetics. That is essentialism. But Gayatri Spivak says, in order to fight the mainstream, in order to fight the center, we should strategically employ essentialism. Strategic essentialism means some amount of essentializing is important, necessary to battle European essentialism. Examples are Africans reverting to folk heroes and traditions. Africans employing African folk culture, etc. Africans employing African folk culture, etc. is essentialist. It shows that we are like this, we are essentialists. And Gayatri Spivak says, it is okay to do that because it will help Africans to strategically battle or fight. Sorry. That means it is strategically necessary. Fireworks! Did you like my fireworks? Post-colonial literature I won't teach. It is just for reading. Read and I will explain if you don't understand. There are so many things. Probably I'll teach you another time. There are so many things. In your book, it is, in your printout, it is there. It is given in more better format. So I'm stopping here. Post-colonial literature, you should read and get back to me. And I will somehow, somewhere teach, but not as part of theory class, but I mean as part of other class, net class. In net course, I will teach, but in theory, it is just for reading. Okay, if criticism and theory people in this class, if you ask me doubts, I will of course address it and explain. All right, did you enjoy? Wasn't it amazing? I think it was amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Myself saying it is amazing.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
Hmm.
Oh, you said a word, mestizos, that means Latin American people, na? Hmm?
Yes,
Okay, ma'am.
not Latin American, Latin Americans in America.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, ma'am. And,
Saurabh is
I-
asking what is reading against the grain. Let me just explain that.
Ma'am,
I
what
don't
is epistemic violence? I think it's referred in
I
can the
said, let me
subaltern speak?
explain Saurabh's answer when a question, then I will come to you. 1 minute, okay?
Okay.
Reading against the grain is a term. I don't know exactly why he said grain, but reading against mainstream perception. Dominant reading. Yes, that is the meaning of reading against the grain. What were you asking me? Tell me now.
Epistemic violence.
Epistemic means knowledge-based violence. When the Westerners come and tell us that our knowledge is not knowledge at all, they will, Macaulay said, he will replace our knowledge with his knowledge. That is epistemic violence.
Ma'am, can you explain agency again? The term agency.
You are a woman. I'm just giving an example. Somebody is a woman. That woman has a lot of rights at home. She does a lot of things. But does that woman have the agency to decide what car to buy? Does a woman have the agency to decide which investment scheme to start? In a simple way, that is agency. Agency is the capacity to do something, to think something, to act. Does the post-colonial subject have agency? Can he be the center of the text? Can he write a text? Can he say what he wants? Or will the colonized people always teach him to say what they want? Why teaching us English? Macaulay wanted to take away our agency and put words into our mouth, put ideas into our mouth, so that we will stop thinking our thoughts and think their thoughts. Clear?
इथे नाही खेळायचं, बाहेर जाऊन खेळ.
Yes, ma'am.
सांगितलंय ना, इथे नाही, बिलकुल नाही. टीव्हीला बॉल लागेल बेटा.
Ma'am. Ma'am, I want to ask a question, but this is not about today's topic. Can I? Actually, William Emerson has given 7 types of ambiguity. So I want to ask that simulacra is the part of this 7 types of ambiguity.
Not at all.
Simulacra is not included, na?
No, simulacra is Jean Baudrillard's term. It has nothing to do with 7 types of ambiguity.
This is in GATE exam, so ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am. Ma'am, if you have another classes of post-colonialism, we want to join your lecture again. If you have any class in any class you are taking this topic, please let us inform.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. I mean, I will. Adopt, adapt, adapt, and all are very old things. I've given it in the literature part. You can read it. And if you have doubt, then you can ask me. Shall I stop now because I have another class at 7?
Yes, ma'am.
Bye.
Ma'am.
With doubts.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye.